connecting your brain and body with interactive games and tests. Why is there no physical activity in today's health physical? Trazer is an holistic technology used to rehabilitate, prevent falls, and improve sport performance. Trazer reports provide you, your clinician, your physical therapist, or athletic trainer objective data to make decisions on your health and performance over time. Measure what matters to change your game. Take the Trazer Challenge. Confidence, growth, connected by Trazer.
Good evening and welcome to Oh What a Show. I'm your host, Paul Valley. With me, as always, from UtahStreetReport.com is Ryan Blake, also of Give That Fan a Podcast, and from the Sideline Sports Network itself, Jon Shearer. Gentlemen, good evening to you. How are you today?
Doing lovely. How about you guys?
Doing well.
Yeah.
I can't complain. The O's have played really well lately.
Yeah, they're 20-16 since May 19th. They're 28-26 in their last 54 games, which is a third of a season, which is an 84-win pace if you were to start at the beginning of the year. We will get into all of that in just a moment.
Yes, sir.
But some stuff has happened in Major League Baseball that could directly affect the Orioles, and that's the fallout from this Angels-Mariners brawl that happened yesterday. If you're just tuning in or if you just found out about this, Andrew Wentz of the Angels threw inside, high and tight on Julio Rodriguez in the first inning and missed him. Hits Jesse Winker in the second inning. It incites an all-out benches-clearing brawl. And now we have the fallout. And you're looking at a 10-game suspension for interim Angels manager Phil Nevin, the father of Orioles infielder Tyler Nevin. He got 10 games because Major League Baseball concluded that he started Andrew Wentz with the intention of having him throw at Mariners players because they threw high and tight on Trout the day before. So Nevin is suspended for 10 games. Andrew Wentz, the pitcher who hit Winker, he's suspended for 3 games. Now the serious ones here, a 7-game suspension for Winker for getting into that fight, a 5-game suspension for shortstop J.P. Crawford of the Mariners, and a 2-game suspension for phenom outfielder Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners. Is he an outfielder or a second baseman? I'm so sorry.
Outfielder.
Doesn't matter. Outfielder. He's not playing for 2 games.
Well, but that's the thing. The only one to not appeal the suspension is Andrew Wentz. Everybody else has appealed their suspensions. There's other suspensions in there, like Ryan Tepera got suspended for 3 games, the reliever for the Angels. And then Anthony Rendon, who's out for the year anyway after right hand surgery. Apparently he got into the scuffle, which has to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of after surgery. He's suspended for 5 games. We don't know if he has to, if because he's out for the year, he serves it this year, or he has to serve it next year when he gets back healthy, which for Rendon is a big if rather than when, because he's always hurt, it seems. But Julio Rodriguez, Jesse Winker, J.P. Crawford, some three key players for the Mariners suspended, but they have appealed, so they are in the lineup tonight for the Seattle Mariners. I don't know that any of us knows how long this appeal process takes. Maybe it takes a day, maybe it takes 2 days. But gentlemen, thoughts on these suspensions and how it could impact this series?
It's very important. I mean, the Mariners are already without Ty France, who's been one of their best hitters this season. But, J.P. Crawford's having himself a solid year. Julio Rodriguez, we all know what he's capable of doing. He's kind of like Bobby Witt in that he struggled when he first came up and now seems to have the league figured out. As of yesterday, he was tied with Jorge Mateo for the American League lead in stolen bases with 19. So a very key player for them. He's added 11 home runs as well. So yeah, it could very well be important. Jesse Winker, their starting left fielder as well. So it plays a big impact. We don't know, like you said, how long this appeal process is, but those are some key pieces in the middle of that lineup that they'll be without. And hopefully this appeal only lasts a day or two and we get a little bit of relief at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Rodriguez's stats. He also has 19 stolen bases, which is that's a tough guy to get out. I mean, you still have Rutschman, but I mean that 19 stolen bases, 19 stolen bases. So like you would hope if you're the Orioles that this guy gets suspended the last 2 games of the series because he's playing tonight. Typically, this takes about a day, so I would imagine from my knowledge, it should be cleared up sometime tomorrow before tomorrow's game. That would be, at least from my experience seeing things, typically you'll see it like maybe the second game of the series, you'll see what happens. That's just what I've seen in the past. I don't know what's going to happen, but for the Orioles' sake, hopefully he doesn't play. But the Orioles need this series because they played well. I talked to somebody who's a big Orioles fan, talked to them at work today, and I told them the way the Orioles do this is they'll play well against teams they shouldn't play well against. And then whenever they see Tigers series, they go and get swept. They let up and then they just lay down and then you get swept. Like this is a series I'm worried about, not because I think the Mariners are better, but because I know how the Orioles are, and I don't want this to turn into a Tigers series where you get swept or you lose the first two and you just gotta hope you win the third game. I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, the caveat there for that Tigers series is that the Orioles were missing Austin Hayes, Jorge Mateo, and Ryan Mountcastle for that series. They were missing some of their best offensive players.
But you can't disagree that the Orioles do this.
No,
whenever,
they do. All you have to do is go back to the beginning of June when they had back-to-back series against the Mariners and the Guardians, who were both under 500 or right at 500 at the time. They lose 2 or 3 of the Mariners, and they could have won 2 or 3, but the balls didn't bounce their way. And the same thing happened against the Guardians. Those rubber matches in both those series ended up being one-run ball games that the Orioles didn't come back to win. Now, the Guardians at the time, we didn't realize that was starting their hot stretch where they've been on one of the hottest teams in baseball ever since that series with the Orioles. The Mariners, they had lost 5 of 6, including losing 4 out of 5 in a 5-game series that included a doubleheader for a rainout against the Angels. And then they come out and they sweep the A's. They take the first 2 games of a series against the Angels to win 5 in a row before they lost that game yesterday that included the brawl. So they've actually been playing a little bit better recently, winning 5 games in a row, coming in with matching records with the Orioles at 34 and 40. Orioles, you mentioned how well they've been playing. And yeah, look, the White Sox have a bunch of guys on the IL. They're missing some of their best players. However, they still one of the best offenses in the game. And the Orioles came in and shut them down. They win the first 3 games of the series, shut out game 1, a bullpen game that you think, oh, this is a throwaway. And all the bullpen does is go out there and throw a one-hitter against the White Sox. And then in game 3, you get Spencer Watkins coming back, going 5 innings of 1-run ball. Orioles win that game with their C lineup 6-2. And you're like, oh my gosh, now they're going to have their best lineup in on Sunday with one of their more consistent starters until recently in Jordan Lyles. And they go out and they lose the ball game 4-3. But they get that tying run to third base with 2 outs in the 9th inning for Trey Mancini, who, guys, I hate to say it because I love Trey. Awful at bat by Trey there with 2 outs in the tying run. He swung at 2 balls. The count should have been 3-0. Instead, it's 1-2. And then the only strike that he swung at in the at-bat was a swing and a miss for strike 3. Just an awful at-bat there by him. Also an awful at-bat with Odor with the bases loaded, nobody out. Doesn't even put the ball in play. He hits a fly ball like Mullins does. Mullins' fly ball ties the game instead of getting the Orioles to within 1 run. So, but look, you win 3 out of 4, and in that 4th game you have a lot of fight, and you get really close to pulling it out. Now you're heading to Seattle, trying to get a little payback on them. We'll see how that goes. You're starting the series with 2 of your most consistent best starters in Tyler Wells and Dean Kramer. Guys, I know I'm jumping out of order here a little bit, but with the way the show started, kind of have to do it that way. Thoughts on this upcoming series? How are we feeling about the Orioles? It seems like the one thing that's been holding them back this year is the starting pitching, and over the last 7 or 8 days, starting pitching has pitched to a sub-2 ERA.
Yeah, it's weird that that Tyler Wells and Dean Kramer are the guys we're excited about,
Right.
seeing in the rotation. Obviously with the looming suspensions for the Mariners players and, 2 teams coming in very similar spots. You mentioned that they're both coming in with 34 and 40 records. Both teams just had a small winning streak snapped yesterday. So there's a lot riding on this series. It could play, we don't want to jump too far ahead or get too
No,
optimistic, but
of course
this
not.
series could play a big role in the wild card standings.
Right.
And so, obviously you want to come out and take 2 out of 3, and this team has shown that they're capable of doing so. Haven't lost the series since the one against the Guardians at the beginning of the month. So there's a lot to be excited about, and hopefully the hot stretches from Tyler Wells and Dean Kramer will continue as the season keeps going.
Yeah, and I was looking at the standings before yesterday's game, and there was only 2 teams, not counting the wild card teams, that were above the Orioles in the standings. So the Orioles were at least tied or above everybody. So they were jumping teams before yesterday. So like when we looked last week, there were so many teams, we talked about it, that were above them. So they have this capability of jumping these teams. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about like catching the wild card either. Like I just want to see us continue to win series, get back to 500, because I know if this team can get to 500, I know that they have the capability. I'm not saying playoffs, but I just, like you've said before, I want to see them competitive in August and September, make it a little bit fun. I just thought it was kind of cool to see them above the Mariners, above the Angels, like above these teams, above the Rangers, above all these teams that, a couple weeks ago, we didn't think they would be above any of these teams. And so I just found it interesting looking at the standings that they had started jumping teams. And, I'm a little bit optimistic.
Well, you look at what this team has done, and let's dive into these numbers that we kind of threw out at the beginning of the show. 54 games is a third of the season, it's exactly 1/3 of the season. And the Orioles in their last 54 games are 28 and 26. They're 2 games above 500 in their last 54 games. That's an 84 win pace if you stretch it out over the course of a full season, which is far and away ahead of where we expected this team to be this season. Then you look at the fact that they're 20 and 16 since May 19th, and they haven't lost a series since June 5th when they lost that rubber game 7-6 to the Cleveland Guardians. So this is a team that is on the upward trend, and they're looking good. They're playing hard. They're competitive. The only thing holding them back is the starting pitching. They have the 3rd best bullpen in the major leagues. Their offense has been clicking since the beginning of May, but the starting pitching, aside from Wells and Kramer, has been middling at best over the last month or so. And that's going to bring me to, and I know I said we would talk about it at the end of the show, but this is the segment that was supposed to be at the end of the show. Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey's suspension is up after tomorrow. He went 6 shutout innings for the Aberdeen Ironbirds last week. This is a guy who the Orioles are planning on putting in their rotation when they feel he's ready to come up. He could get a start, 2 starts, 3 starts for Norfolk, but they're going to put this guy in their rotation. Last year, the numbers above a 6 ERA, but that's because of a 7 to 10 start stretch in the middle of the season where he was awful. But the second half of the year, after the All-Star break, in 10 starts, Matt Harvey was 3-4 with a 4.18 ERA. That's a pitcher that can help a ball club win ball games. Do either of you anticipate Matt Harvey being that pitcher? Or do you think it's going to be more of the guy that posted a 12-plus ERA for about 10 starts from May to the middle of June?
To be honest with you, I have no idea. I wish I did, but no, Harvey's not going to be the guy he was a few years back when he was the ace of a Mets staff featuring Noah Syndergaard and a young Jacob deGrom. He's not that pitcher anymore. You need guys who can give you length, who can eat up some innings and keep you in ball games. And Harvey is more than capable of doing so. You just have to hope that he can maintain enough consistency to play a legitimate role and be kind of a Jordan Lyles type where he's a stopper in that rotation, try to give the bullpen a night off. If he can go 5 or 6 innings, that's pretty solid. You're not going to ask him to go 7 or 8 unless he's pitching well enough to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's a guy who can contribute, and this team needs starting pitching in a bad way right now, especially with the injury to Grayson Rodriguez. DL Hall hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire in his rehab starts at Norfolk. I guess it's not rehab anymore, but so yeah, you need someone like Harvey to be able to step in and give that veteran presence. And maybe he's the next guy who Tyler Wells is rocking a T-shirt with Matt Harvey's face on it that says "Best Dad Ever."
There you go.
Yeah, when I look at Matt Harvey, I think of Jordan Lyles. Like you said, Ryan, I mean, what he did yesterday was just fantastic. I mean, I know he gave up the 4 early, but for him to settle down and give up nothing the rest of the way and give the team a chance to fight and a chance to win, and whenever you have something like that, you saw what happened in the 9th inning where they loaded the bases and they almost tied the game up. They had a chance to tie it. They had a chance to take the lead. Like, they had those opportunities. So whenever your starting pitching can settle down and they only give up, like you said, 3 or 4 runs, like, you don't want your starting pitcher to give up 4 runs. But in games like yesterday, it keeps you in the game. Your bullpen only has to pitch 1 inning. And the bullpen gives up nothing. Like, that gives you a chance to win. And with this offense, we've seen it. If you give this offense a chance and it's not 8-0, which any team basically would be dead, but if you give this offense a fighting chance, you just keep them in the game, they will typically battle back for you. So that's all we want out of Matt Harvey. Just go 5 or 6, give up 3, maybe 4, and the bullpen should take care of the rest, and the offense gives you an opportunity to win the game.
Well, and then you look at this Orioles offense, and when they score 5 runs or more, they're 23-8 this year. Now, look, most teams are going to be well above 500 if they score 5 runs, but an Orioles team last year, if they had scored 5 runs, it was a crapshoot because their ERA was like right around 6 for the season. Jordan Lyles giving you 7 innings of 4-run ball. Yeah, like you said, you don't want your starter giving up 4 runs in a ball game. However, 7 innings of 4-run ball does keep your team in the game, and with that, the Orioles bullpen being one of the best units in all of baseball, you have an opportunity to win that game, and they were so close. Cedric Mullins hits that ball maybe 2 feet further. That ball might drop in or hit off the wall, and then you score 2 or 3 runs, and you end up winning that ball game. At the heart and soul of that Orioles offense are Austin Hayes, Ryan Mountcastle, and Adley Rutschman. And you look at Austin Hayes, he hit for the cycle last Wednesday, 7 doubles, a triple, 5 home runs, 22 RBIs in June. Despite his lowest slash line of any month this season, he hit 293 in April, he hit 299 in May, and 261 with a 292 on base percentage in June. Yet the offensive production is there, the most RBIs he's had in any month. 6 games since our last show, he's hitting 320 with 4 doubles, a triple, a home run, and 7 RBIs, and an even 1,000 OPS. Ryan Mountcastle hitting 289 this month, 10 doubles, 6 homers, 17 RBIs, and Adley Rutschman has a double in 5 straight games. And in the last 14 games, he's slashing 320 with a 10-10 OPS, 10 doubles, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. You have basically, on any given night, they're your 3, 4, 5 hitters or your 4, 5, 6 hitters, and they're firing on all cylinders. How good is this Orioles lineup when these guys are playing that well? And where do they stack up against the rest of the league?
I'll let you start this one off, John. I feel like I've been
you
early.
Talked about those guys, but if you look at Cedric Mullins and Mateo, they have, I think it's about 36 stolen bases between the two of them. Mm-hmm. So not only do we have power and we have guys that are hitting pretty good average, but you also have 2 guys in the line. They're the only 2 guys in the lineup that are actually stealing bases. When you have almost 40 stolen bases between 2 guys, you have some speed. And typically Mateo is down there at the bottom and Mullins is at the top of the lineup. So they're right next to each other with all that speed. So you have speed in the lineup, you have power, you have average. It's a fantastic lineup, top to bottom. Maybe they could use a little bit more out of the bottom of the order, but typically the bottom of the order isn't the greatest part of the lineup anyway. Most lineups, that's not a great area anyway. So I love the lineup. I just love what they've done. Rutschman coming around, because you said last week, I think you said to just kind of give him a chance and not, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, you said about don't panic. Like I said, move him down a little bit to take the pressure off. You said just he'll be fine. He's doing exactly what you said. He's coming around. Maybe it was just nerves. He had to get used to the speed of MLB pitching. Like, until you see it, you really don't know what it is. So,
yeah, I think it was funny too. I don't remember, like you said, if it was last week or the week before, but you suggested they move Rutschman down the lineup, and then that night Rutschman was batting 4th. So they threw him right into the fire. But yeah, those are 3 guys: Hayes, Rutschman, and Mountcastle. They're hitting 4, 5, 6 in that order tonight. And those are guys who, over the last couple weeks, have shown that they're capable of getting you an extra base hit just about any plate appearance. Rutschman, I believe, has doubles in his last 5 games, so he's starting to figure it out. I don't remember who it was, but someone mentioned on Twitter the other day that a certain guy named Manny Machado used to hit a ton of doubles, and then eventually they became home runs. So Rutschman's going to have his family out there in Seattle with him. Maybe that'll give him a little extra jolt of energy. Like to see him put another home run on the board tonight. Or at some point this series with his family there. But yeah, it's a threatening lineup when they're firing on all cylinders as they are now. They ran into kind of a buzzsaw with Dylan Cease yesterday. He's a really good pitcher, and he was absolutely on his game. 13 strikeouts over 7 innings. Not much you can do there. We've mentioned they still made it a game there at the end, but a fun lineup that's only going to get more fun as we start to see some promotions coming.
Yeah, you mentioned Manny Machado, that 2013 season. He had 52 doubles when he hurt his knee at the end of the year. And then the next time he had a healthy season in 2015, it started like 4 straight seasons of 34 or more home runs. So if that's what happens with Rutschman, I am all for it. Although I don't think Manny even cleared 40 doubles ever again for the Orioles, but that's because all those doubles were becoming 35 home runs.
Right.
Now, look, as good as those guys have been, and look, you mentioned Cedric Mullins, and I'm glad you did, John. He's hitting over 300 his last 12 games. Mancini's been slumping a little bit, but it's only a matter of time before he busts out. You look at the rest of the lineup, and out of Jorge Mateo, Rougned Odor, Richie Martin, and Tyler Nevin, you're getting basically nothing. You're getting basically nothing. Odor, I feel like, hasn't had a hit in 3 weeks. Mateo got his first hit in the first game of that. His first game in over a week in the first game of that series against the White Sox. Tyler Nevin has 3 hits his last 13 games, and Richie Martin wasn't getting enough playing time. He did come through with an RBI single on Saturday, but his average is sitting right around 217 right now. At what point are the Orioles? And look, you have Arauz, who had a single and a home run yesterday, drove in 2. That's a banner day for that guy. You're not getting that out of him most nights. At what point do the Orioles need to consider calling up a guy like Terrin Vavra, who's been injured a lot, but is hitting well over 300 and gets on base and can play second base for you? Probably younger and rangier than Odor is at this point. At what point do they make a move and say, all right, we got to get somebody up here who can actually do something, because it's almost an automatic out when you get to the bottom third of that order?
Well, I'm excited about this one. I love Terrin Vavra. I actually have him ranked higher on my prospect list than Jordan Westberg, which ruffled some feathers. I can explain that at a later date if we want to get into it. But yeah, Vavra, he got off to a really hot start. He had reached base safely in 12 out of 13 games to start the year, and then he strained his right hamstring trying to beat out a ground ball. He missed a little bit over a month. He came back. He's still hitting well. He's slashing 312, 419 on base, and 422 slugging this year in AAA. Almost as many walks as strikeouts. He has 21 strikeouts and 18 walks. He's a really, really good pure hitter. And I think he'd be here by now already if it weren't for the injuries. The hamstring injury. Then just the other night, he got hit in the head with a pitch, was removed from the game. Luckily, only missed one more and then came back. But Vavra's a very capable hitter. There aren't a lot of gaps in his swing. You're not going to expect him to hit for a ton of power, but an exciting prospect in my opinion. And when you look at the bottom of the Orioles lineup, the other day the Orioles ended up winning the game, but it was at least the second time this year that Ryan McKenna was the 5 hitter. And of course went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. So something's got to give. And
that's
and
not
these guys
the first time that he's gone 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts this year either. And I think the last time was when he was number 5 hitter too.
Yeah. So, not a guy you want in the middle of the lineup, and some of these prospects who are working their way up can help bridge the gap there. But, we've talked about these guys who are struggling. Rougned Odor, he's starting in his first game tonight since last Tuesday. So he hasn't been getting regular playing time, a couple pinch hit appearances. But he's hitless. You mentioned it felt like it'd been 3 weeks since Rougned Odor got a hit. He's hitless since 11 days ago when the Orioles won 10-2 in Toronto. And everybody got a hit that night, it felt like.
He scored 10 runs, everybody's going to get a hit.
Yeah, his last hit was that triple into the left center field gap, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
He had 2 hits that night, so I don't remember which one was the last one. But 7 hits and 7 walks in 62 plate appearances in June, not doing very well. Richie Martin came up and looked like he was going to light the world on fire for a little bit in that Royal series. He went 4 for 9 with 2 triples in that series. He's 1 for 19 since then without an extra base hit.
That's the real Richie Martin.
Jorge Mateo slashing 139, 223, 246 in June. Tyler Nevin 135, 288, 212. So you look at a guy like Nevin who's been given the chance to win the everyday third baseman job, and to this point has not taken advantage of it. Mateo's in the lineup for his defense and his speed, but if he's not getting on base enough to take advantage of that speed, you need something else there from him. Martin, Mateo, and Nevin all OPSing under 600 on the season. So, it's starting to look like last year where second base was kind of a black hole and you had fans clamoring for Jahmai Jones. I think this year Taron Vavra is going to be the guy, and I think he's one far more capable than Jones of actually sticking on the major league roster for a while.
Yeah, I just don't understand how you can be a major league hitter. And I mean, maybe I'm old school. Back in the day, if you hit around the Mendoza line, you didn't bat. Nowadays it's like, if you strike out a lot or if you hit around 200, if you hit a lot of home runs, you can say that. But these guys aren't hitting home runs. They're not doing anything offensively, except for Mateo, who, he's stealing 19 bases. Other than that, none of those guys have done anything. So I don't understand how they're sticking around. I know you said defense, but I mean, at some point you got to be able to swing the bat. It doesn't matter how well you play defense. If you can't hit a baseball, then there's no point in you being in a lineup. There's no DH for a defensive player. It doesn't exist.
Well, and you look at it, Arias is your third baseman when he comes back healthy. And from what I heard last week, he started batting practice, so hopefully he'll be up here in another week or two. And that should fill a hole at third base because his expected batting average was far higher than what his actual batting average was. And we know from what he did last year that guy, once he gets going, he can really help. He's not going to carry an offense, but he was their best hitter with runners in scoring position last year. He was their best on base percentage guy. Hit about 270. I want to say he hit 279 last year. So Arias is a guy who can really come in and help your lineup. Mateo is not going anywhere because of his defense, because of his speed. Until Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westbrook get up here, Mateo is your shortstop every day. The Orioles can live with his lack of offensive production in the 9-hole if Arias is back and they're getting something out of third base and they're getting something out of second base. You're okay having one slot not produce. You're not okay having 3 slots not produce. And that's why I think the writing's on the wall that when Arias gets back healthy, that's when you're going to see either a trade or and I think more than likely a DFA of Rougned Odor, and you're going to have Taron Vavra up here playing second base. And you also have to look at what's going on in the minor leagues right now. Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, and Connor Norby all promoted to Bowie. Cowser and Mayo, their last few games, Cowser, his last 14 games, he's slashing 346, 429, 582 with a 1010 OPS, identical to Rutschman's OPS over the last 14 games. 7 doubles, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 8 walks. Kobe Mayo in June, 288, 374, 475 with 849 OPS. 6 doubles, 3 homers, 9 RBIs. The number I love to see, 10 walks in the month of June from Mayo. Those guys deserve the call-up. They deserve the promotion. Connor Norby, after a solid start, he's hitting just 218 since the end of April, 208 over his last 10 games. I think he's going up with them because the writing may be on the wall that Vavra may be on his way to Baltimore sooner rather than later. Prieto may be on his way from Bowie up to Norfolk, and then that's where Connor Norby's going to be playing second base for Bowie. Otherwise, even though these guys kind of came into the Orioles system at the same time, and the Orioles want them to stick together, Norby does not deserve the call-up to Bowie, other than the fact that he's got to replace the second baseman Prieto, who may be on the move. What are your thoughts on the promotions from today and my theory that it's all because Vavra might be on his way to Baltimore?
I think that makes sense. The promotions it's good timing with Aberdeen having clinched the first half playoff spot for the South Atlantic League. I think. Sorry, for some reason I'm so bad with the names of these minor league.
Well, they've switched
groups.
because of Frederick being taken away.
Yeah, it was Single A East for a couple years and this whole thing. But in any event, you mentioned Norby hasn't been playing very well after his solid April. He still has a 340 on base percentage in what is now 81 minor league games since he was drafted. But the big thing with Norby this season is he's striking out far too much, and it's way more than we saw. He's striking out at a much higher rate than he did in college at Eastern Carolina. So it makes sense that it's because of, a little bit of a chain reaction is going to start in the minor leagues. I think we very well could see Terrin Vavra soon. He certainly has deserved at least consideration for a call up. And then you have to fill that spot at Norfolk. So yeah, it makes sense. Whether it's, someone like Joey Ortiz, I think Prieto was probably a little more likely at this point just based on performance. But, I like that they're keeping these three together. You mentioned they were all drafted in the same year, coming up through the system together. I like that they'll be able to keep playing together, but you want to see Norby cut back on his strikeouts, and I think he's a pretty solid complete hitter as well. But the strikeouts need to be cut back if he wants to continue climbing.
Well, and to be fair, real quick, Kobe Mayo was actually drafted in 2020. Norby and Calzo were drafted last year, but they both made their affiliate debuts last season.
You're right. It feels the same because of the lost 2020 season with COVID. But
correct.
Yeah, you're right. Mayo was that 4th-round pick the same year we got
Westberg and Heston
Yeah.
Kjerstad. Yeah. John.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know how it works whenever it comes to minor league hockey, whenever it comes to baseball, whenever it comes to any of these leagues. Whenever you call somebody up or you're about to call somebody up, somebody's got to get the call up from lower because you got to fill that position. So naturally, by default, somebody's got to get caught up, and that's typically how it works. And especially with the Orioles not having any production from the second base spot, you're going to need something. If you think you can make a run at one of these wild cards, if your team keeps playing like this, at some point you're going to have to make a decision. Like I said, with the trade deadline, you're not going to buy, but at some point you got to make a decision with these things. At some point you got to make a decision on whether you're going to get rid of Santander or Mancini or one of those guys. At some point you're going to make a decision on, hey, do I want to call up a second baseman and get rid of Odor because we need more production because we're 500 or about 500 and we can potentially make things interesting come August and September for a wild card spot. So at some point you got to make a decision. You got to pull the trigger on something. You can't just wait around forever. Otherwise, like I said last week, you have spots where these guys are costing you games that you can't afford to lose, and then you end up losing 2 out of 3 instead of winning 2 out of 3, and that makes a big difference. So at some point you got to do something.
Well, and hey, look, let's talk about that trade deadline, and let's start with Odor. Is this a guy who even has a chance to finish the year with the Orioles? I think the whole reason that they signed him was so that if he hit 20 home runs in the first half of the season or had 20 home runs by the deadline, they could trade him to some team that's looking for help at second base. Maybe like the Atlanta Braves, who just lost Ozzie Albies for an extended period. Maybe Odor can help that team. But the fact that he's hitting, what did you say, Ryan, like 160 in June? And he doesn't have a hit in the last 11 days. I don't know that that's a guy who you can even trade. That you're probably going to have to DFA him. Well, I don't think
it doesn't help that you're not playing him either. I mean, that doesn't help either.
He didn't play most of last week because he had some back issues, and that's why he was out a lot. Brandon Hyde loves him some Ruth Neto Odor. Brandon Hyde has these players every year that he loves that everybody else can't stand. But he keeps playing them because he loves them for some reason. Probably
Buck and Ryan Flaherty.
Yeah, and look, I would gladly take Ryan Flaherty over what we're getting out of the 7, 8, 9 hitters right now. But you look at these guys, the Orioles have decisions to make. I think Santander is all but gone at the trade deadline. I think Trey Mancini. The only reason I can see Trey Mancini sticking around is the Orioles need somebody to DH for the rest of the year, and you're not really going to get a ton for a guy who's a DH first base type who's probably just a little above average as a hitter, who's at the end of his deal, who is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so he's a 2-month rental. Then maybe some bullpen arms. Guys, who are the guys that are going to get traded? Like I said, it's probably Mancini and Santander, but then who else after that?
I mean, I don't think Odor has really any trade value at this point. Yeah. I didn't think he should have started the year with the team. He proved me wrong. He was good for a stretch, a lot of clutch hits, but he is who he is, and he's not a very good baseball player. And I feel bad saying that, but that's the truth. And when you have someone like that who's holding up a roster spot, you're either going to move him for a guy who's not going to be in anybody's top 30 prospects, or you're going to designate him for assignment. And I think it's more likely that we see the latter in this situation, unless someone calls up Elias and says, what do you want for Odor? And Elias draws a name out of a hat of a few guys that he might like and is surprised when the other guy says yes. So, we'll see what happens with that. We talked about Jorge Lopez last week. I don't necessarily think that they should be trading him, but I think they should absolutely be taking calls and seeing what teams are willing to pay for, a stud reliever, honestly. If we want to tell it like it is, Jorge Lopez has been a stud this season. So, I agree with you on Santander. I felt since the beginning of the season that he was going to be traded at some point. Mancini, if the return is right. But, there aren't a whole lot of guys who I think, we're going to be able to trade for someone who's going to find their name near the top of our top prospect list anytime soon. So it's really a matter of what Elias can get back, who he wants to clear spots for. But we'll see what happens because it's going to be an interesting couple weeks leading up to the deadline.
Yeah, I don't think Lopez gets traded. Maybe, like you said, they take calls on him, but I don't think he gets traded just because I think Elias, he's so calculated with everything he's done, with everything that he does. And I think that he thinks that with all the call-ups next year, they probably can make a run at getting to the playoffs next year, and they're going to need a guy like Lopez. You know what I mean? Like, you guys said it last week. You can't keep trading away all of your prospects or all of your good players that are MLB starters and get prospects because eventually you have to have MLB players. You can't just keep trading away all of your best players. It just doesn't make sense. So I think Mancini or Santander, one of them gets traded, but I don't think both of them get traded. And I think Mancini somehow ends up staying and they end up working a way to keep him. But I think Santander's going, and I think they make a couple other small moves, but I think that's only actual big name that you're going to see from the Orioles. Other than that, I think they're mostly going to stay put.
Now, and to your point, that at some point you have to keep guys that can play.
Yeah.
I think it sends the wrong message to your fan base if you have a guy like Jorge Lopez who is you know that if you have a lead getting into the ninth inning, you're winning that ball game.
Or even the eighth. I mean, the middle of the eighth. I mean, you said a couple weeks ago what he leads MLB in multi-inning saves, like with six
multi-inning saves. Yeah, so you get to the eighth, ninth inning with the lead, chances are you're winning that ball game. And I think that with the way the Orioles are playing this year, and the fact that they look like maybe they're either starting to turn a corner or they have turned a corner, they're definitely the most competitive team we've seen in 5 years here. So there's no doubt about it. If they win one of these next 2 games, they will have their first winning month since August of 2017. That's a big deal for a rebuilding franchise. And it just sends the wrong message to your fan base if you take one of the key cogs of that team and you trade them away just because they're 29 years old. Like we said last week, relievers have a much longer shelf life. Now, let me ask you this, guys. I know this wasn't in the notes, but I'm going to throw you another curveball here. Cedric Mullins. How shocked would you be to see Cedric Mullins traded because they can get more for him? They move Hayes to center. They keep Santander, and now Stowers is playing one of your corner outfield spots. Would you be shocked if Mullins was the guy that was traded?
I wouldn't be shocked. I was hoping you were going to bring up Dylan Tate, actually, because I just wanted to mention him at some point. But no, Mullins, it wouldn't stun me. He's underperformed a bit this season, or maybe he overperformed last season. And if other teams think it's the former and he's just underperforming and the guy he was last year when he hit 30 home runs and stole 30 bases, if that's the real Cedric Mullins, then he's going to bring back a decent haul in a trade. And so if Elias is at least fielding phone calls and he gets an offer he can't refuse, I think he could be expendable. And it feels weird to say that because he had an incredible season last year and, he's shown flashes this year that he's capable of replicating that. But yeah, when you have an outfield logjam like the Orioles do, and I hate to say this, but even DJ Stewart's been hitting well at Norfolk lately.
Oh no!
So,
gosh. DJ Stewart.
It wouldn't shock me. I don't think they should necessarily do it unless there's an opposing GM who thinks that 2021 Cedric Mullins is the real Cedric Mullins. But no, it wouldn't shock me at all.
Mike Elias, the Marlins are on the phone.
For me, it's hard to trade him because I think his value would be a lot lower than it was last year. Obviously, because he's playing a lot worse than he did last year. So, and Elias again is a calculated guy. He doesn't just make a move to make a move. He obviously is going to think it through. So I don't think he's going to do it because if he was going to do it, I would have thought he would have done it last year, getting the most out of Cedric Mullins. Not going to do it when he's having a little bit of a down year and he's only shooting flashes because teams are going to come at him and say, well, Mullins only had one great year. What else can you show us? You know what I mean? So I think that they could haggle with him in that regard. I don't see Mullins going anywhere. They love him. I believe they love him. And I think you're more likely to get rid of Santander and some combination of Mancini. But I don't see Mullins going anywhere.
Well, yeah, and the thing with Mullins, they're not trading him unless they're absolutely blown away. They're going to have to get probably 3 major league ready players to get rid of, and 1 or 2 of them has got to be a pitcher, and that's the only way that they would be getting rid of Mullins. I do still think that at some point you got to talk to him and say, look, man, we got to play in left field because your arm's not playing.
I was going to throw you that curve. I was just about to throw you that curveball. Do you switch him and give Hayes center field and then move him to a corner spot?
I 100% think that you do, especially with that cavernous left field that they have in Camden Yards now. Hayes can cover the ground in center field, and he's got the arm to play center field. Mullins has the speed to cover all that ground in left field where he doesn't maybe need to play as deep as Hayes does. But his arm plays better in left field because it's a shorter throw to third, shorter throw home than it is from center field. So for me, Mullins, and look, I'm going to tell you right now, Brandon Hyde's never going to do it. He's never going to do it, which blows my mind because he was hired because they said that he was the next up-and-coming manager in this game. He needs to have that conversation with Cedric Mullins and say, we got to put you in left field because we think that you're more valuable as a defender to us in that spot. Ryan, I think you agree with me.
Yeah, I tweeted the other night that I think we should move Hayes to center field full time if for no reason other than his arm. And I got a little bit of brushback on it. And one person even said that, with the new wall at left field, that there's more ground to cover in left field than there is in center. I was like, center field is still 410 feet straight away. And I don't think you're sacrificing a ton of range going from Mullins to Hayes in center field, but you're certainly upgrading the arm. And I think you need an arm like Hayes in center field to, to play that role. And yeah, I tweeted that, and then the Orioles went out and put on one of the best outfield defense displays I think anybody has ever seen. You had Hayes make a diving catch, get an assist at the plate. Mullins tracked down a couple hard to get balls. Even Anthony Santander had a nice catch approaching the wall out in left field. So
on a full out sprint.
Yeah. So it was a great display of defense. I don't think it's a pressing need for the Orioles at this point, but Hayes' arm in center field, I think, could be a real difference maker.
Well, and the thing about that is, like you said, it's not a pressing need right now. But when you are a competitive ball club, if you're assuming that Hayes and Mullins are still 2/3 of your outfield, there's going to be situations where you're up by a run in the 9th inning in a game that you need to have, and there's a guy on second base and a base hit to center field. Who do you trust to throw him out at the plate? Is it Mullins or is it Hayes? And there's a reason why on fly balls to deep center field, guys are tagging up from first base when Mullins makes the catch because they know he's not going to throw them out. The fact of the matter is, right now it doesn't matter because you're not a playoff team, but at some point, Mullins' arm is going to start costing you ball games.
But you're not even that far away this year from being a playoff team, right? I mean, 6-7 games. I know what you're gonna say, but even this year, like, you can't tell any of these guys. You can't go to Santander or Mancini and say, "Well, you're not a playoff team this year." Like, you owe it to your guys to do the best do the best moves possible. Sorry, I can't talk right now. To do the best thing possible for your team. So if the best thing possible for your team is to move Hayes to center field, then why wouldn't you do it? Your job is to help your team win games. It doesn't matter if you're the Tigers, the Orioles, or whoever. Your job is to do the best you can to help your team, put your team in the best position to succeed. And if you're the Orioles and Hayes is better for center field, and you know that, then that's a move you got to make. And shame on you for not making the bet. I know it's not that big of a difference, but it really does make a difference if, like you said, it's a 1-run game, and say there's a guy on third, 1 out, and they're tagging up home, but sack fly. Like, Hayes is more likely to make that throw home than Mullins hitting the catch.
Yeah, it's a stat. I mean, Mullins has a 20 grade arm and Hayes has an 80. It's really night and day with those two. I think back to, we all know how Buck Showalter was with his guys, and we're starting to see a lot of similar characteristics from Brandon Hyde.
I think it's Hyde's biggest flaw, honestly.
Adam Jones should have been a corner outfielder 2 years before they moved him out of center field.
Yep.
Mullins, I think we're going to see in a similar situation where it's going to become a long overdue move. And like you said, Paul, it's going to start costing the team's games because, people talk about, what outfield position gets the most assists or, where would you rather have your stronger arm? Well, it's not just a matter of getting assists, which Austin Hayes has plenty of. I believe he's still second in the American League unless that changed in the last couple
days. Second in the majors.
Majors. He was behind only Miles Straw as of a couple days ago.
Right.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But it's you think about like a cornerback in football, right? The best ones don't have high interception numbers. They don't get thrown to enough to put up high interception numbers because quarterbacks are scared to throw to him. Austin Hayes having him in center field is going to prevent teams from even trying to take the extra base. So it doesn't matter how many assists he's going to get. It doesn't matter, the comparison of assists between him and Mullins. It matters just being the presence out there. And if Austin Hayes is the guy who's catching that fly ball in front of the 410 sign, you got a runner on first. He's not even going to think about trying to go to second.
And you're already starting to see it. And you're starting to see it more and more because of what he's been doing the last few weeks. But he's really been doing his whole career. When there's an opportunity to take an extra base, if Hayes is the outfielder that has the ball, these guys aren't going. They just aren't. Now, in a close situation, on a fly ball to right field like the other day when he threw a 97-mile-an-hour strike to home to throw the guy out, that's a situation where it's a close ball game. You need a run. But in these other situations, they're already beginning to stop. If you can even say beginning to stop. They're already beginning to stop running on Hayes. Mullins, they're going to take every base they can against him because they know 9 out of 10 times he's not throwing them out.
Absolutely.
So, guys, great show today. Before we sign off here, is there anything either of you wants to add to our show this evening?
I brought up Dylan Tate, actually, and I won't be long on this, but Dylan Tate was a guy who I think could be mentioned in trade discussions. I wouldn't be shocked to see him get moved either. I saw a statistic on him today. I believe his sinker is second in baseball in win probability added behind only Clay Holmes and by only a run. And we've all seen Clay Holmes against the Orioles. We've all seen him on Pitching Ninja. A dirty slider. Tate's is right up there with him. That's a pitch, even if it's not his whole body of work that teams are looking at. That is a pitch that can be absolutely dominant. Tate has also given up the only 2 hits out of the Orioles bullpen since a week from tomorrow. Keegan Aiken, his home run to Lane Thomas in the first game of the National Series, that was the last hit given up by an Orioles relief pitcher other than Dylan Tate.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's insane.
Yeah.
You're talking 5 days ago.
Yeah, well, they had 6 perfect innings in Game 2 against the White Sox after a shutout on Wednesday night, the rain-shortened game when Vespi didn't give up a hit. The bullpen was nearly perfect again on Saturday. Vespi gave up a walk, Tate gave up a hit and a run, but the bullpen's been really good, and Tate's a guy who, if he continues to be the only one giving up a hit here and there, he could find himself on the chopping block. But there's a lot that I think other teams could be drawn to with a guy like Dylan Tate in trade discussions.
Yeah, and we tend to get attached to guys who are having good years. But at some point, some of these guys who maybe – and Dylan Tate, we've seen – I don't want to say more bad than good. The stuff's always been electric, but last year out of the bullpen, his ERA was above 4. This is the first year where he's really had extended success. And with a guy like Tate, maybe that's somebody who you do want to capitalize on him maybe being at his highest value right now. So I can definitely see Dylan Tate being on the chopping block as far as being traded for the Orioles. Again, I do think it's going to cost a little bit more to get him than it would have in past years. John, anything to add to that before we sign off here?
Nope. Just make sure you follow us on all of our socials. Follow Sideline Sport One, and make sure you follow all of our social medias that you see on the screen. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and also at Oh What a Show. It's the Twitter handle for the show. So guys, continue to follow us, continue to tune in. We'll be back next Monday with another installment of Oh What a Show, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Until then, for Ryan Blake and Jon Shearer, I'm Paul Valley. This has been Oh What a Show.